Thank you for those joining today for the Making Manufacturing a Destination Industry. And my name is Joel. I'm a Senior Client Success Manager here at WorkBuzz. So I work predominantly with a lot of our enterprise clients and those within the manufacturing industry. And I'm joined by the wonderful Lisa McCandless from Premier Foods. So Lisa.
So wonderful, thank you, Joel. I like that, I'll take that.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to our MP office. I think you're the first guest speaker to host one live in the office, so it's the first.
Well, I thought you guys always come and visit us at St Albans. I'll come and see how you lot hang out. Definitely.
But yeah, we've got I think a wonderful session today. I think we've got a lot of interesting things to cover, and obviously, how do we make manufacturing a destination in terms of for new employees, those are starting their career journey. But we'll talk about some of the challenges that Premier Foods have faced. I guess with the last couple of years, all those economic challenges, maybe what's happening within the current economic environment in 2024. How does that look like for Premier Foods? We'll talk a little bit about what you're doing to make Premier Foods a thriving industry for those joining within the food manufacturing space. And then towards the end of the session, we'll look at some of the best practices in terms of running a survey.
Okay.
And I think what you guys do really well, I think a lot of the people on this call can take a lot of the takeaways from that and apply some of those learnings to their own surveys. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll be dealing with questions towards the end of the session, so we'll have a short Q&A. You do have the ability to upvote some of those questions. So if you do see a question that you like and you would like Lisa to answer that, please upvote it. We'll do our best to answer those towards the end of the session. So just to kick things off, Lisa, how about you introduce yourself to the audience in terms of your role at Premier Foods and your experience and background?
Sure, so I'm the Culture and Engagement Business Partner at Premier Foods. Been with the business now for 4 years. This is my 4th year. I am a boomerang. I used to work for them before, and I've got an amazing job at the minute. It's very much it's a very diverse role in terms of looking at leadership behaviours, leadership capability coaching, and D&I as well. Fits quite nicely in my arena. So yeah, it's all about culture change and how we can make Premier Foods a great place to be. Yeah,
wonderful. So just to sort of set the scene before we start talking about the things that Premier Foods are going through. In terms of the difficult economic environment that we're currently facing post-COVID, obviously the recession and inflation, how Premier Foods coping with that sort of environment? How are you navigating through that?
Well, like a lot of food manufacturing industries, I think during COVID we actually thrived. We actually did really, really well. Because you think about it, people were at home and it was, cooking from scratch. And our range, I mean, we mentioned a few at the beginning, but we also do a lot of cooking sauces and, Lloyd Grossman and all those kind of products. So we did well in COVID, but I think COVID created an opportunity for a lot of us to kind of reflect in terms of who we were. And we saw, obviously, the great exit where a lot of people left businesses. And traditionally for us, we have in our manufacturing sites, as is a lot of other food industry competitors, I'm sure, an amazing workforce, which is very loyal, but long tenure. So they've been with us a long, long time. So I think the economic challenges that we're facing right now is primarily about inflation. And that has an impact, obviously, in terms of ingredients and what we buy. And it's that whole thing about keeping that balance of making sure that we can maintain profitability, but also focus on the things that are really important to us, which is sustainability, our R&D agenda, and all that other great stuff, which is all about the employee engagement. Which obviously drives what we do and do well.
In terms of that knock-on effect, as you mentioned, inflation, I think, and obviously pricing going up. Have you seen that affect the growth of Premier Foods? I think you've actually done quite well this year, I think.
We have done really well. I mean, obviously, our results are out there in the public domain. There's no doubt about it. But, in terms of the cost of living crisis, and it's cost of raw ingredients, which is the biggest impact, and obviously importing. So that cost has to get absorbed somewhere. And it's just about us thinking differently in terms of budgeting and how we take our business. But yeah, we had a great year. There's no doubt about it. We've got a fantastic team at the top of the tree right now that's really driving things really well for us. And it is a great place to be. But I think it's things like retention, and it's about employee engagement, which is the key thing. Because you talk about, what's different for us. And when I say those people have got long tenure, we're now getting obviously Generation Z within our graduates joining us, and I think it's only 3 years away that Generation Alpha is going to be hitting our workforce and our, you know, our colleague base. So it's that whole thing about preparing ourselves as a business to deal with almost societal challenges, if you like, rather than perhaps, you know, business or economic challenges. It's what's happening, and also tastes and what people want to eat. It's changed. Diet needs a change. Reduction in sugar. I mean, we make Mr. Kipling's cakes and they're great, but they're low in fat and low in sugar, some of them.
That's the thing.
Which you kind of go, as a concept, when we first developed it, you kind of think, well, that's how that's going to work, no sugar in a cake. But it doesn't. It works really, really well. But that's what people want.
Absolutely. The changing dynamics is just moving so quickly. You've got to adapt as a business.
Definitely.
Moving forwards. You mentioned obviously about the generational differences. And I think one of the state of engagement surveys or research that we did last year, a lot of the manufacturing clients that I speak to also on a daily basis, they mentioned about the attrition and retention being one of the major issues that they're facing. In terms of trying to attract those new generational people within the manufacturing industry, what are sort of things that Premier Foods are doing to do that?
We do a lot of things, and let's be honest, Joel, I mean, food manufacturing, it doesn't look like sex ed. Like, you know what I mean? If you think about kids coming through, leaving school, and obviously, you know, graduates. And I guess one of the key things we do is we do a lot of apprenticeships. Our early careers is really heightened in helping, you know, presenting to school children the broad depth of roles that are available. It's not just standing on that line packing that cake or packing that sauce, you know. I mean, and there's some fantastic jobs in, you know, from start to finish in our supply chain, everything from marketing to sales. Then you've got your HR and your IT and your support functions, and then it goes right through to obviously the supply chain element, through to from procurement all the way through to buying ingredients, to baking it, to selling it. And you know, the roles that go with that, they're vast. They're absolutely huge. And I think that's one of the things we find a lot when we go into schools and say, what do you do? And they go, oh, you do like the food industry. It's opening people's eyes really of what's available. And you know, 4,500, so our levy, we have that as, you know, to utilise for our apprentices. And you know, got a fantastic colleague who does a lot of work in that area. And we've got quite a number of people doing apprenticeships. But apprenticeships now it's not just for the 16-year-olds coming out of schools, it's open to all. So we offer them obviously for our existing colleagues as well, and the opportunities for them to develop and grow. We, like everybody else, we have a graduate scheme, which is always interesting in terms of how, you know, and a lot of work we do is researching exactly what that generation wants out of a business. What's important to Gen Zers these days is, what's your sustainability agenda? What is it that you're doing, you know, to help save the planet? You know, can I come here and be my true authentic self? It's all that stuff that makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, just open their eyes to all this variety of different roles within the industry itself. It's not just on the front line, but the corporate side, the marketing, the food scientists and all that. So like I said, it's the world is their oyster. Obviously, they understand their career path.
And a lot of our roles are just brilliant for STEM, scientific. You know, we have scientists in terms of food design. You've got your technical side as well, your engineering. You know, it's just there's so much depth to it.
Absolutely, and I really like the fact that you do go into those schools and sort of embedding some of that information.
We partner with schools, that's our part of what we're trying to achieve, and you know, a few other means as well, like placements and obviously making sure that we put ourselves out there and our EVP in terms of who we are.
In terms of some of those pointers that the sort of manufacturing organisations mentioned in terms of the nutrition issues that they've had, it's the competitiveness in terms of sometimes you've obviously got a low skilled job that perhaps it's easily transferable to other industries. So they're seeing people move from manufacturing, maybe to go into retail and those kind of things. What would be sort of the key reason people might be leaving Premier Foods, and how do you sort of counteract some of that? Is it, I'm guessing they're not leaving just pay and things?
I mean, that could be one of the things, let's be honest, that can be certainly one of the things. I think as well, it's the competitive nature, like you say, and it's getting roles which are more sexy, more exciting in other areas. And with the food industry, and you know, forgive me anybody who might be in the food industry, we all swim in the same pool. I mean, I've worked for Pladis, for United Biscuits, for Premier Foods, you know what I mean? And we kind of like work the circuit as it is. And, you know, it's having that FMCG kind of knowledge. But I think what we're trying to do in our recruitment processes is attract people that are really different. and bring different sort of perceptions into what it is that we do. And the reasons people leave, it can be career growth, opportunity for development. It can be paying benefits. Obviously, that's always. And again, we were traditionally a UK-based company, but we've got a really great international footprint now. So I think that's becoming much more attractive in terms of giving that international career for some.
Excellent. Just before we touch on sort of that development piece you just mentioned, obviously the opportunities available for those that are still within the organisation. We've obviously used the word thrive.
Oh yeah, we love that word.
Obviously the topic agenda today is about building a thriving organisation. But you actually specifically use the word thrive, and I love the word because it encompasses so many positive aspects about flourishing, developing, growing as an organisation. But obviously, how does that thrive word work within the organisation?
So through our ESG, as ESG targets, we talk about being reflective of the communities that we serve. And thrive is literally, we talk about the fact that we want you to join Premier Food, regardless of who you are, where you come from, who you love, all that kind of great stuff. And we'll provide the right environment for you to thrive. And we even use Thrive as the name of our conversations, our development. We call Thrive Conversations that we do actually in manufacturing. And and it is really trying to tap into the individuality of our colleagues, and benefiting from that. And it's, I don't know, is it too cheesy? Is it double Gloucester? I don't know. As a word, if you talk about thrive, do we thrive? Yeah, because I even in the 3 years I've been back, I've seen people, progress, those that want to, and do really, really well. But then again, there's some people that just want to be in an environment where they feel safe. They can be themselves, and you know what I mean, and they can make a contribution in their way. And it's also about, you talk about growth and development. It's not necessarily just climbing the ladder up. It's going sideways. And like I said, with the breadth of roles we've got colleagues that have moved from procurement to HR to IT. Do you know what I mean? It's you can move across kind of like disciplines, as it was within the business. And it's taking that, or should I say, I'm going to say risk. It's the faith you have in those individuals to make those quantum leaps, and make sure that you've got the right support network and development around them to thrive and be successful. We don't want anybody, to fail. That's for sure.
The bare minimum is having that safe environment where they can be themselves. I think what I really love about Premier Foods is that you don't treat people as colleagues, but as individuals, and it's about understanding the different needs of those individuals. And I think moving on to sort of the next point is that I think what's really stays close to your heart in terms of the topic itself is D&I. You're quite passionate about this.
This is my specialist subject, Joel. I'm so glad you mentioned it.
I really like the fact that Premier Foods places a massive emphasis on D&I. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We've got a mantra. It's called #Okay to be me. And basically throughout, what falls underneath that is our whole I&D journey. And like a lot of organisations, I mean, ours is about 4 years, maybe 5 years old. So when it's been during COVID and pandemic, everybody knows that D&I, and obviously after the sad news of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement and all that kind of stuff, it really started to impact our colleagues. And obviously I think we had a social responsibility to respond to these things. But above all that, it's just the right thing to do. It's morally correct. And, and in terms of creating a safe environment where people can be their true authentic selves and really tapping into that. We always say, and quite consciously, I&D. So we lead with inclusion. And what we say is people join our business and we create an inclusive culture where you can just be yourself. And then we'll benefit from the diversity that falls out of that. It's not a tick box exercise. It's not about picking that white woman for that leadership job, or going for the, holding out in interviews with the LGBT community. It's not a tick box at all. It literally is saying that everyone's welcome. I know a lot of organisations adopt that. And again, it gets to the point sometimes with some people it does broad on double Gloucester, but we actually mean it, and it is true. And that's what we want. We want the diversity because it gives us and it does drive back to productivity into the bottom line. It does actually move businesses forward. So we do a lot of work.
It's a lot of people say it, but like they don't follow through with it, or they don't necessarily mean it.
It breaks my heart, I'll be honest, Joel. If somebody joins us and then they leave a little message to say, oh, I&D wasn't what I thought it would be, or I didn't experience it in my team. And it's a big place. I mean, it's like I say, we've got this international footprint now, but in the UK we've got sites and manufacturing sites all over, and it's how you actually speak to people and reach out and connect with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm talking about the guy that mixes, the mixing mess, who makes the product, to the ladies down on the end who pack it, and it's getting that kind of concept because of the variety of our roles. We have our marketeers, we have our sales, and then we have those people that work in factories and do really good jobs and love doing what they're doing. And you connect with those as well.
What I really like, I think, at the time when you just mentioned the sort of the Black Lives Matter thing, I think you were one of the first clients that actually ran a specific survey around that, which was the first I've seen in terms of my sort of the clients that I work with. But that was really fantastic to see. So it just shows you the sort of how we can use that information. And then,
I mean, as an organisation, we're very apolitical. We don't put any views out there in terms of but we have like our Black colleagues who had a voice, and the thing that I'm passionate about is giving everybody that voice and hearing all those voices. And what you refer to was Black History Month. We put out a little survey just asking people what is it that they want to see change, and what matters to them, which is really powerful, because once you get the feedback, you listen, you've got to do something with it, haven't you? You can ask for feedback, you've got to do something with it. That's the point.
Yeah, and I think that ties in really well with sort of that attractive piece again, is making people feel very inclusive to the organisation, and taking on board some of these race issues and things around D&I actually makes a massive difference to the individual.
It makes a huge difference, definitely. And then again, when you do it as an organisation, you've got to put it in your processes right from the beginning. That, how do you stamp out those biases when you look at somebody's CV? Or even their name on a CV, and from that point of entry right the way through, you've got to really kind of you've got to walk the talk.
Yeah,
that's the thing from start to finish.
So we talk about the thriving culture and how to build it. Obviously, you've got sites all across the country, and I think we had a conversation earlier in the day about some of those sites that people feel more associated with the site and the brand that they work for, rather than sort of premises as a whole. And you've got the corporate side. How do you sort of encompass all of that to try to build a culture that people can obviously resonate with as a whole, rather than just?
It's an interesting question, that, because you're right. If you think locally, if you take some of our sites, they associate themselves with a brand, so they're called the Mr. Kipling factory, or they're called the Mini Roll factory. And the Premier Foods bit just doesn't seem to ever resonate. And I think you've got to capitalise on that identity, because that's important to them, and they are part of Premier Foods Group, but that's their identity. And I guess for me, the best story I ever heard was a guy, and it was at our Morton factory. And if you've ever been to Morton, it's a great place. And it's just on in the Wirral in Liverpool, and they are so honest and direct with their feedback, which is just what you want. And this one guy said to me, listen, love, it don't matter what name it is above the door. It's like my local pub. I don't care whose name it is above the door. He says, but when I walk in, if you pull me a decent pie and you look after me and I feel safe and I feel welcomed, that's what I want. And that's as simple, simplest format you can get, Joe, of what engagement is. That people are in an environment where they feel safe, they can be themselves, and they've got all the facilities and amenities that they need in order, and the tools and obviously the systems to do the best job they can do. And a lot of people, that's all they want.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very basic need.
Exactly. And again, it's a camaraderie. We did an EVP, and one of my colleagues in recruitment, our acquisition manager, he looked at what our EVP statement stood for. And the one thing that came back more than anything was that sense of camaraderie, and being part of a family, being part of it, you know what I mean? And again, when you know those things about your business, then you've got to capitalize on it. So if that is a strong community, how can we support that community and be part of it and talk to that community, if that makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think building that community sort of topic, it's not only the thing about building a thriving organization within on-site, but it's the things that you guys do as an organization for those within the sort of the local communities that these people work in. How do you share some of the things that you do in terms of like internal communications and channels and things? How do you get that message across that we are actually doing things for the people that work for us?
And
building that strong
back to our ESG, one of our targets is to be reflective of the communities we serve, and we do a lot of volunteering. And there are some sites that sit in different areas, obviously, which are local, but the factories themselves, they feed the community. Do you know what I mean? You've got generations working in factories. And, you know, when you meet some people, I was talking to an engineer the other day, and, you know, he's, so where you from? It's a mile down road, you know what I mean? And that's what you get is, I'm literally a local who's come here and I work here. So the voluntary stuff that we do, we base it on food. We do a lot within kind of like, you know, food waste, food banks. We partner with Fair Share, and it's that whole thing about making sure that the wastage of food is controlled. We've done things where we've worked in soup kitchens, we you know, and we actually give colleagues a day a year to do a voluntary exercise. And it's great because what happens is the teams do it together usually. And so there's an element of team building as well that falls into that. So they do it together, they take their day, they find a charity, and we've got a list of sort of like food charities that we work in. And obviously because we're all over the UK, it's what's local. And I think that's important because if you think about charity work, yes, we have a partnership charity, like say with Fair Share, but in terms of working with the local communities, if you walked into a factory and said, what's the important charity for you? They'll say it's that cancer hospice down the road, because a lot of us have, you know, benefited from it, or it's that kids at hospital or whatever it is. And so it's giving them almost, you know, kind of like the autonomy to pick what's important to them and do it that way. Yeah,
fantastic. So I think we covered the sort of the key aspects in D&I.
Covered a lot, haven't we?
Obviously in employment and making it attractive. One thing before we sort of talk about sort of best practice with surveys. We
did a survey as well, did we tell you that? Yeah, sorry, go on. We've done lots of surveys.
Yeah, that's a lot of surveys. In terms of one of the things for manufacturing, or one of the key issues is having sort of the right skill level of management. I think that disconnect between sometimes the people at the top to the bottom, there's usually a difference of opinion. Obviously people at the bottom will obviously say people at the top that don't listen to us, but that middle management where you need that skill, you need that person to connect the two together. How are you finding that at Premier Foods, and do you feel like, how are you upskilling those managers to be able to have these conversations with their teams?
Good question. Yeah, we do loads of development in terms of managers and helping them into, you know, from, it's the basic skills, isn't it? How do I talk to a team? How do I performance manage an individual? How do I have a sickness conversation? It's those kind of things. But the other key element or module that we try and teach is this whole thing about, first of all, the I&D drives it. How do you treat people individually, and how do you do that sort of encourage respect? And one of our values is, you know, about encouraging respect of other people. And then it's one of those other key things about engagement. How do you talk to people? And, you know, there is a fear sometimes around that middle management of getting it wrong. And obviously, if you look into kind of history, past cases and industrial tribunals and that kind of thing, you can see why that's the case. But we're trying to teach them through our leadership behaviours, you know, be curious, inspire ownership, take the ownership yourself, but and give it to others. You know, make sure that if you've got these big ideas, you know, you can bring them out, think big. And so it's more a be true to yourself, who you are and what you represent, and also then exercise and role model these great behaviours. I think that's the key thing. It is behavioural a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, process and systems are important. Of course they are, they have their place. But I think for me, it's just kind of like talk to people with humanity and respect and encouragement. That's what we say. But sometimes that's quite difficult.
No, absolutely. I think what you just mentioned is I think previously managers would look after a team or some colleagues, but now it's managing instead of individuals. I think those managers need to be upskilled and obviously understand how to deal with.
Yeah, you take like a classic sort of manager, let's, for want of a better, you know, sake of argument, call him Dave. Everybody needs a mate called Dave, don't they? So you've got manager Dave, who just basically, you know, he can say to me, I don't get it, Liz, I don't understand this I&D stuff, I don't understand what you want from me. But if I say to him, okay, Dave, if you've got a woman in your team that's having a hard time right now, I don't know, going through the menopause or whatever, how do you deal with that? And you know it'll be Dave's instinct, his empathy and his behaviour towards that individual that's going to make him successful. And he doesn't necessarily need somebody like me to tell him what to do. But it's kind of like, you know, it's like, you know, I always think in that concept, what would Dave do? You know, the classic manager. And if they don't know what to do, it's making sure that we've got the right network and processes in place where he can go to and ask for that help.
That's the thing. It's not about creating new training manuals.
No,
it's about making sure they've got the right support and network to grow as a manager. and to be able to have those conversations with
the only thing that manager Dave might struggle with sometimes is if he's from Generation X and he's you know, leading members of his team that are Generation Y and millennials and obviously Gen Zers. It's kind of, you know, don't father them. It's that whole kind of patriarchy, you know, it's that balance, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because that can be a natural thing for Dave to do. You know what I mean? I'll father these kids and help them, whereas actually, no, they're adults and do it one-to-one and just maintain that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned about having the right conversation. I think this moves on quite nicely to sort of the surveys. I think a lot of the times people feel.
I wondered when we're going to talk about the survey. Go on, let's go on. No, I'm with you.
So obviously we have you've just finished your second survey with us, but I think surveys obviously seen as sometimes as a tick box exercise for HR, and it's about shifting that sort of mentality about what the survey is about. What is it going to bring to organisation? And I think it's having those results at the end that the managers can then go to their team. So let's have an honest conversation about these results and take it to that level. And it just shouldn't be seen as a top-down approach.
Absolutely.
But in terms of sort of moving on to best practices with service, I think what Premier Foods do really well, I think, in terms of if I had a shining example I could share with all clients I work with, I think you would probably be one of the people at the very top.
Oh, bless you, Joe. Pay you later, mate.
Do things very, very well. I think if we start off with sort of, first of all, let's look at survey frequency, because I think if we look at the research in sort of the past couple of years, a lot of organisations have moved away from the traditionally run annual survey. We tend to encourage more regular listening. So a lot of the clients that we work with tend to run maybe quarterly or biannually at the very least. But you're quite different in that aspect. You actually run once every 2 years.
We do. I think the one thing we want to avoid is survey fatigue. And that's the thing. During the pandemic, especially, we used to do kind of like, you know, the pulse surveys just to check in on climate and how people are feeling and that kind of thing. And they were because they were literally just telling us, is everybody okay? Is everybody happy? What is it we need to do, kind of thing. When you talk about an old colleague survey where you're asking everybody's opinion, and again, don't forget one of my values is every voice needs to be heard. It's then collectively taking that and pulling out the trends and making sure that people get the opportunity to do it. But also you've got to always be mindful and respectful of the facts that we do it from a kind of voluntary perspective. So we send you the link, you can do the survey, you can take part of it if you want. The hard work is the upfront bit, telling people why we want their opinions, what is it that we would do with them, and how we're going to implement it. And also for 2 years, back to your question, it's a good chunk of time for you to get those results, analyse them, put in your engagement plans, and then deliver them. That sometimes it's the last bit that doesn't get done. And, you know, holding people and managers to account in terms of what the survey has told us. I mean, at the moment, it's a bit of squidgy bum time for me because we've just done survey number 2. So 2 years later, and we're waiting on the results of that. So it's the difference between what we did what the results were in 2022 v 2024. So we're all, you know, on tender hooks at the minute thinking, has it changed? Has the engagement, have we had an impact on the engagement level? And again, you know, I think it's that whole piece about the thing that I'm really proud of, and it's very kind of silly what you said, Joe, but the real thing I'm really proud of is we've got an 88% response rate in 2022. And, you know, there's different ways you can do that. You can staple gun people to a chair and, you know, glue an iPad in their hand and say, do this, so you're not leaving until you've done that. But back to what you said about managers, I think in terms of the ownership of why I need your opinions, guys, is because I can then put plans in place to help you, and it will affect you in your world. So when we do the engagement bit, it's not seen as just a HR initiative. It's a company-wide initiative. And we've got some great HR managers who inspire ownership for their managers to communicate that. Because it's almost like that camaraderie of team community, isn't it? Tell me what's rubbish about this place and tell me what you really love, and then we'll work together and fill in the gaps. And I think that's the piece that we try to encourage, that managers own that and be part of it.
No, definitely.
It just cannot be a flash in the pan. So the 2-year thing is so we don't get fatigue. We do actually fill the second year with other surveys, but then it just balances that out. And one of the key surveys that we do is the I&D one, where we actually collect our colleagues' data. So it's to build the plans, it's to give us time to execute. And obviously, I think it's a good chunk of time for us to measure the differences because what gets measured gets delivered, isn't it? It's one of those, isn't it? It's back to that basic.
Yeah. And I think we encourage all organizations to be unique. Everyone has a different approach to it. It's about, like you've just mentioned, knowing whether you're going to be survey fatiguing too much, so whether you're sending out too many surveys perhaps, but also giving yourself enough time to make meaningful action and giving that time to sort of embed into the organization and see some of those changes.
And the strong communication plan for us before we launched 2024 is, you said we did. We need to go back and say, you said in 22 you wanted this is what we did. Now we're going to do 24. So you got to remind people, because sometimes they don't necessarily make that connection that, oh wow, that initiative was implemented because of the results of the survey. So
I think that's a good point that you make. I think one of the key things about a successful survey is the pre-survey communication. You do so well on. I think, like you just said, it's building that story. It's saying that you said we did, and slowly implementing that through your obviously internal comms strategy that you're going to be doing. And it's about making sure that colleagues are, one, they feel safe and confident to put out the survey, but they feel that action is going to be taken on the back of it. And I think that showing what you've done on previous years and seeing that come through.
And it's accessibility as well, Joel, as you know, because you work with us on this. We send out email links to our connected users, and then you've got your deskless community. So how do you engage with them? And and I hate to say it, but the winning one is QR code on a poster on the back of a toilet door. Because it does work, because people scan, and if we can scan the QR code, gives them access to it. And the great thing that we did this year with you guys is it was people's employee numbers, which was the kiosk code to access it. So there was none this running, because before we used to have to print out loads of kiosk codes and hand them out. Now it's kind of like, if you're in that toilet washing your hands, or you're in that corridor and you see the QR code, scan it, do it there on the spot. Keep the questions sort of direct and to the point. And obviously, I mean, what's interesting for us this year, which I'm excited to learn about, is it's 45 questions. It's the same questions again for 24 survey, but we've added another question, which is, I believe my business/team did something with the 22 results, because I think that's a really strong indicator of leadership in terms of, because you didn't listen to me last time, so why should I do it this time? But if you did listen to me last time, then of course I'll give you my opinion.
And like you said, those QR codes, it's all about reducing the friction to be able to complete the survey. You obviously got an 88% response rate on the previous survey. So that's, if you check about 4,000 employees that you currently work with, that's just phenomenal in terms of that response rate.
We're very proud of it, absolutely. And again, we can be a little bit arrogant or a bit mean towards our colleagues on the shop floor, because these guys are tech savvy. They have their mobiles, they book their holidays, they do their online shopping with Tesco. Do you know what I mean? They know how to use technology. So giving them a QR code, that's it's appealing to most of the generations. People want to be able to do that and just get on with it, really.
Absolutely. In terms of the success of the survey, people completing it. It's what we just talked about, that feeling safe to give an anonymous response to the survey. And obviously we have our confidentiality threshold that we work with. WorkBuzz. You get a lot of pushback, I think, especially within the manufacturing space, that people say, I don't trust it still. I feel like you will be able to see my individual responses. How do you get that message across that they do have that safe space to give feedback?
It's really easy, Joe. We just bragged them with cake this year. And that's what we did. I mean, obviously we make cake. And what we did is we had a little bit of a campaign where we made some cakes with it's called OK to Say, it's our survey. And we branded the cake and the concept was, have a brew, have a cake, sit down and fill in the survey. But you're right about that mistrust. It is there. And, and no disrespect to WorkBuzz, it's not you that they don't trust. It's usually, and it's that us and them culture, which exists in a lot of environments. So how do we break that down is we do our best through briefings to tell people what this data, actually gives us, and how the confidentiality agreement actually works, the confidentiality promise that you guys have. And we've even used your lovely video with your lovely face explaining it in briefings and things like that. And I've had quite senior managers come up to me and say, oh, Lisa, can you tell me what so-and-so said? What was his or her comments in my team? I can't see it. I can see the number of people, and I can see collectively as a super user administrator, as can our senior team, but you can't identify people within it. So, and obviously, as you know, if it's less than 5, it's protected anyway, so you don't actually get to see anything. And again, it's visibility, it's making it, telling people about it. And I've actually sat down with people and said, look at the report. There you go. You can see the team. You can see how many people are in it, and it tells me how many people have answered it. That's it. Don't know who, I don't know who's chosen not to. And again, you know, especially when you do this healthy competition in terms of, you know, the response rates, you got a team of 12 and 11's only answered it. You know, you can't go on the witch hunt to find the 12th person. Like I say, it always comes back to this. If people don't want to answer it for whatever reason, that is their choice, and you should never take that choice away from people.
That's exactly it. It shouldn't be forced. It should be open, and people should have the flexibility to choose and decide for themselves whether they want to participate. And I think the fact that we did get a high response rate usually is quite a good indication that they believe that action is going to be taken. So that's, again, fantastic in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
We obviously talk about sharing those response rates. I think that's really key. I think it's about healthy competition, as you just mentioned. It's the transparency, which is what I love about Premier Foods, is that the whole process is transparent, from the response rate to the what you're going to be doing after the survey, when are they going to be seeing some of that results filter through to their teams. Just to go back on that response rate, how do you share that? How do you create a healthy competition without using it, without managers using it as a way to sort of hit their team on the head to say, look, you haven't done this. Let's that round this, you know, how do you create healthy competition?
It's a great question, because we don't use it as a name and shame publicly, but what we do is we share it with the key leaders, and this is where the role of leadership comes into play for me. So I share it on a daily basis with our HR community, because they can then reach out and do the necessary communications. But on a weekly basis, I send it to our executive leadership team, and I tell them exactly, you know, where we are in terms of the response rate and what they are like coming through. And also by analysing the data, you know, doing some high level analysis, you can see potentially, for example, if your engineering population isn't as engaged as perhaps your production population, or your sales team are not as engaged as your marketing team. And it's kind of like, you know, inspiring ownership and giving them the data for them to see fit on how, and you're right, they don't hit people on the head. They literally, you know, they get together and say, okay, has everybody filled in the survey, running the focus groups, or even asking the question, you know, if people sit there and go, no, I'm not going to do it. Interesting, your choice, tell me why. Let me understand why you've chosen not to do it. And it's having, like you say, open and honest dialogue about it, very much so. And it does help you pinpoint perhaps where, if you've got a team that's not engaged in filling in the survey, then you do ask yourself, does that manager need support? Where are they at in terms of trying to sell that message, that the survey is live and we want people to participate? So yeah, it's taking the data and using it, I think, to that extent. But like you said, be honest with it. As soon as we're finished, we put out a comms right across the company. It says, thank you very much, the survey is now closed. You know, 88% of you filled it in. This equates to 3,700 people within our organisation. Fantastic result. Thank you so much. And the next step is this. We're going to give you the results, and you know, we're going to work on them.
And that's down to having a clear line of communication strategy. Yeah. When the survey's closed, we're going to share the response rate straight from the off. Yeah. And so that people can obviously feel like they've actually contributed to something that you're obviously.
But your leadership thing is really important as well, Joe, because it's the ELT. If we've inspired that ownership, when the results come through, then they need to see that picture and then be able to drill. And then you want your senior leadership team to then understand what the high level themes and trends are coming out of the survey, and inspire ownership for them then to use the platform to go away and analyze their own results. Because there's kind of like two ways in which, if you think about operations, it's quite standard, and we have a standardization project where we're trying to do things as best we can in the same way across our sites. So what their initiative was out of 22 is they got together and they had 3 key work streams.
Oh, really? Okay.
And every site committed to the 3 key work streams, which was fantastic, because, you know, those were the 3 top areas that came out of the survey. So there's initiatives that have driven that. If you go to other kind of sites and, you know, other kind of teams, it's more about the manager going, do you know what? This is my team. I care. These are my results. This is what we need to do as a team to fix this. Because the Premier focus could be very different to what they're looking at in their own results, as you know, and it's kind of like taking those themes, but then owning the actual local plans and executing them.
I think as we're talking about the action plans, I think that's really, really important because obviously it's the whole topic of this conversation about building that thriving workforce and maintaining that. And obviously the engagement surveys plays a big part in terms of your future strategy. But I really like the fact that you sort of do things that also at a local level, you empower the managers to take ownership. So these are the results of my team.
Yeah.
And to want to be able to do something about it and not wait for the top down to say, wait for this to filter through. They can actually start getting onto.
Well, two of our key leadership behaviours is inspire ownership and stay curious. Be curious about why your results are where they are. And you know, and
care with the team,
and be passionate and care enough to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think with that in mind, I think we covered a lot of the key sort of strategic best practices for the survey. So it covers, good communication, good line of communication.
Definitely.
It's prepping early. It's having that you said we did mentality in terms of getting that message across. It's about applying ownership, not just as a HR exercise, but getting the senior leadership to take ownership, getting the managers to take ownership. So it's really such an everybody task, isn't it? It's an everybody activity to really drive this through the organisation.
Definitely, absolutely, definitely.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Well, just before we finish off, what would be the top 3 advice that you would give to other HR practitioners on this call in terms of embedding a thriving workforce or embedding a successful survey, first and foremost, and to help build that thriving workforce that they might seek within their organisation?
I mean, to get that successful survey and the response rate is get the right team together. So I have a cross-functional team that I become part of. So nobody reports into anybody. We're just specialists in our own right. So there's me, and then we've got our data analysis specialist in there, communications manager. You've got somebody representing the site, somebody representing the central functions, and it's getting all those people together and working as a team, establishing yourself, and start early.
Yeah.
Because you've got so many key stakeholders to engage with, and those guys are responsible for doing that, and you support and help them, but it's everybody on the same page and the same, and you plan it out. Listen to me, sometimes planning's not my forte, but you plan it out from where you're launching it. Always check out half term. That's a real big tip. Half term can be a sticker for when we do it, and where half term falls, because it falls in different times in different counties. So plan it, make sure you've got it in place, and it's your comms and engagement plan that runs in parallel with that, which is really key. We've got a great internal comms manager, and what she's done is she's been with us at every step of the journey.
Yeah, sure.
She sends out the comms when things are happening. She sends out the response rates, and it's communicating with people frequently, so they know. And at our sites, our communication strategy, we have these big plasma TVs, where things pop up on it, and while people are in the breaks and eating the lunch, and it's just feeding that information constantly to them.
I remember when we started the conversation for the latest survey that we just closed way back in August last year.
Exactly.
And then we had regular calls once a week with the whole team. So like you said, it's just having that really strong team together. And getting even the comms manager in from the very beginning, so that they understand the journey, they understand what they need to communicate out regarding the survey.
And incentivize it. What we did as well, for every completed survey, we donated £1 to our charity partners fair share.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
And that's the other thing as well, that appeals to the hearts and minds thing for us. So that was a great incentive.
So that was tip number 1?
Was that number 1? I thought I said more than one there, Joe. The one is about getting your team together, planning it well, and making sure you've got comms as a big part of that plan. I mean, that's the most one important thing. And also, there is a difference between comms and engagement. A lot of people get that confused. They call it a comms and engagement plan. There isn't. There's a comms plan and there's an engagement plan. And the engagement plan is that whole cascade of message and getting your managers, inspire ownership in your managers to sell the message, to get that, and don't make sure it's never branded as a HR initiative. That was 4, I think, actually.
Was that 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a free for that.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So before we sort of wrap up, what would be the sort of a key story for you to share in terms of the action plans from the 2022 survey? Obviously, action planning is such a huge driver for people seeing change and wanting to complete a survey. Any success stories that you're willing to share or happy to share in terms of some of the things that you used back based off the last survey to drive some of those key changes that, again, building
I
that part of the
think
workforce?
one of the key things is we've got 4 questions in our survey, which were my favourite subject, I&D, and it is about celebrating the differences of people and whether or not people feel. And with that, we identified that there was people that didn't feel like they could be their true selves, or there were pockets where individuals didn't feel like we valued differences. And those kind of things have driven initiatives, and like a lot of organisations, I mean, only this year we've introduced our employee resource groups, and one of them is a multicultural one. And it was an interesting story because we decided as a business this year to recognise Diwali as a celebration right across, rather than just in the areas, because we have a very strong community in Stoke-on-Trent, for example, where the factory's based. There's a strong Asian Muslim community in that area, and these religious festivals are really, really important. It's important we recognise them. And I think for me, the biggest story was I was in our Stoke factory and I was helping the HR manager on the day when they were celebrating, and it's all about eating and food, so it's right up my street because obviously I work in the food industry and it's my job to eat a lot. And we were in the factory, and this lady came up to me and she said, "This is the first time ever in the 15 years I've worked for Premier Foods that you have recognised my festival, Festival of Light, and how important it is to me and my community. And I feel seen." And I'm not joking, it brought tears to my eyes when she said that, because she was emotional about it as well. And it's kind of like you think, wow, it's just those little things.
Oh, absolutely. It's always the little things that goes a long way.
Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a massive planned, organised event when you distribute in food and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the impact that has on somebody's individual life, and for them to feel safe enough to actually share that with you, that was a hard hitter for me.
What we call those moments that matter at work. But I think it's just those smaller details that the organisations thought about, but for you as an individual, just hits home, and it just goes such a long way.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, I think we are down to sort of the last 10 minutes of the session. So hopefully you've got some questions that hopefully hard questions for Lisa, because I think I've
just seen a really hard one. Really? You can ask me to answer that one.
So let's have a look at the first one. What tips do you have for getting reluctant leaders to buy into I&D initiatives? So again,
that's a really great question. Not that we have any, reluctant leaders. No, because it is an interesting one, is that question, because in terms of generational differences and the I&D kind of initiatives and where it fits in businesses, we're still learning. We're still learning a lot. And I think for me, it's about storytelling. For those leaders that don't get it, what I've done is I've taken that opportunity to put people in front of them who can tell their story and lived experiences, and for people to understand what it's like to live in others' shoes. I think that's the key thing, because the data will tell us, for example, that we're 38% female population, rest male. We don't have enough talent in our female talent pipeline and all that good stuff. Data's great for that. You can do that. But if you can actually hear somebody's story of what it's like to be on the recipient end of being in that sort of like, suppressed environment, or their lived experiences, maybe not a Premier, but other places, it really helps them to open their eyes. So storytelling has been the most powerful thing, and colleague storytelling. We do get experts to come in and share their expertise and everything. But the most hard hitting, if you like, is the fact when somebody actually says, "Let me tell you what it's like to be me." And then it's kind of like, and this is all I need. And at the end of the day, it usually comes down to very simple things like just acceptance and be seen. I just want to be seen, just like that lady at Stoke. Exactly.
That's the basic needs and things. In terms of that sharing, how often would you get a guest speaker or have these story sessions within?
Like a lot of organisations, we kind of chase the I&D calendar. International Women's Day, International Men's Day, Mental Health Awareness Week, all those kind of good stuff, and we take the opportunities there, and our ERGs started the process of driving those. But we would do it at the moments that we can. It's those moments that matter. And even if you get invited into executive meetings and you want to talk about something from an I&D perspective, I'm very lucky because it's kicking against an open door. But it's sometimes you say, "I want to introduce you to so and so who works in so and so factory, and this is the job that they do," and I'll take Manager Dave along. Do you know what I mean? In terms of just listen to their experience and understand, what it actually means. But storytelling is usually the most powerful tool for them. Or has been.
Really good tip, I think, yeah, for organisations to sort of think about the different diversity within the organisation and try to plan things around that.
Yeah.
And feel inclusive.
And find those role models that are willing to tell their stories as well.
Yeah, excellent. Do we have any other questions that are appearing on the screen? No. Is there anything else that you feel you would like to share in terms of the journey that Premier Foods have been on in the last couple of years? Again, regarding that thriving workforce.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything, isn't it? It starts at the top. And if you can get the leadership behind you in terms of what it is that you want to do, whether it be an engagement survey, driving those initiatives, or I&D like we've talked about, and, you know, getting those guys engaged, you know, I think that's the most important thing. And the journey that we've had over the last 4 years is also partnering with people that know this stuff, because a lot of the time, you know, it's the right thing to do and it's what we want to do, but sometimes it might not be our field of expertise. So don't be fearful to sort of partner. You've got to get good partners in place who can help you. And obviously one of the reasons we work with you guys is, you know, your confidentiality promise, and also the fact that I mean, we've been together a long time now, Joel, haven't we? And it's one of those things, isn't it, that it's about you building that relationship and partnership so that you can glean off those experts and you know, and produce a solution which is credible as well. So partnering and picking the right partners is really, really important. And we did that, you know, in a lot of aspects, and we're not afraid to do that and, you know, help and build that external network.
Like I said, it's getting the buy-in from the top. That's really, really important. For those lower down within the organisation to see, because obviously if they're not following their own values and walking, you know, walk the talk.
Exactly.
It's not going to filter through to the rest of the businesses. Like you said, it's having good partners that are able to guide and work together, build the right question set. And again, the survey itself, it's conversational starters. Like I said, it's be curious. It's using that data to delve a little bit deeper into the results and start thinking about what else could we be doing to encompass and think about all those people that work for us. How can we make it more inclusive place to work for them?
Absolutely.
And again, when you've got an inclusive or secure culture for them, an environment, they're going to thrive by themselves, even without all those different initiatives.
Hope so. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
You're very welcome.
And
I
hope that you'll be able to make another visit soon.
I hope so.
But yeah, for anybody that's so again, thank you for joining today's session. If you've got any other questions, feel free to send through to myself directly. I can then pass them on to Lisa. So if you've got any questions that perhaps you didn't think about on the call, but you go away later and you would like an answer for, more than happy to take those questions offline. And also, you can follow through for our other webinars that we've got available. I think we've got another one on the 5th of March in terms of proven strategies to increase performance, productivity through employee engagement. So hopefully you found today's session really valuable. And thank you again, Lisa, for taking the time to come to Milton Keynes.
Thank you for asking.
No problem. Thank you.